Hi, and welcome to When I Grow Up, the podcast on a quest to uncover and celebrate unique paths to fulfillment and joy in our work lives. Today, we're chatting to Katja Kolemitseva. Katja is one of the most beautiful people that I know inside and out, and she has had such an interesting career, starting out in accounting and audit, moving on to managing global sustainability programs for multinationals, and now she works as an executive coach and Qigong instructor. Over the course of this conversation, we went really deep into a number of interesting topics. We reflect on the importance of self-discovery and resilience. We go really deep into cultural expectations and how they can influence our career choices. We also discuss our relationship with our mothers and healing the mother wound and how that is really instrumental into stepping into our authentic selves. We go into her study of psychology and how understanding the human mind is so important to actually healing the societal issues and the issues that we see in the world. We look at emotional burnout and the challenge of that in the care sectors, things like sustainability, nonprofit, where you're actually trying to solve really systemic issues, but you take on so much of the burden on yourself and how that can lead to very high levels of burnout and other physical impacts. We also reflect on purpose and what her thoughts are on finding purpose in your career and how to really listen to your intuition and when it's telling you to move on to the next thing. This was a very interesting conversation. I left really deeply reflecting on a number of themes that I've seen across her career that resonated so deeply with me and my journey. So, hi, Katja, and welcome to When I Grow Up.
Thanks, Nicolette. It's wonderful for me to be here.
We were saying before we started recording about 7 years since we've actually physically seen each other, but we met at HEC, which is now also more than 10 years ago. It's so funny. I always think about that as being very recent, but then I'm like, God, that's more than a decade ago. I know that you have a lot to share and we can probably fill multiple episodes, but I thought it would be an interesting place to start right at the beginning, just to understand a little bit about where you come from, if there's anything about your childhood you wanted to share, and also thinking specifically about whether there was any kind of ideas about career that got instilled at an early age.
So I was born in a country called Turkmenistan. It's in former Soviet Union. It's kind of an area between Caspian Sea, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Iran, and Afghanistan. It's a Turkmen ethnic country with Islam religion, but a very big population of Russian people. It's kind of this mix of the cultures. I was born during the Soviet Union times when the Soviet Union was still intact, but a couple of years after I was born, the Soviet Union was broken up, right? We were a tightly knit community. I had my grandparents. We were all living kind of in the radius of about 5 kilometers. Well, my mom was a single mom. Of course, all of those elements had an impact on me.
What a lot of change, at such an early age.
Yes, it was. And you don't realize that you've gone through it all until you really start to reflect, what are the patterns in my life and, when did they originate? And so you go all the way back to a family breakup, right? Losing my biological father, through divorce. And then the indirect impact of the country breaking up. And then, ultimately came to us immigrating to the UK for my dad's job. And that was a major life-changing moment for me as a teenager at 14. That's a huge impact, yeah.
Huge. And how did that then go into your first career choices, for what you studied? And, I know that you started, with auditing, in the, let's say the more accounting space, which is I can imagine a more secure, stable kind of career path if you want it to be. And so I'm curious how you then went into that. How did you make that decision and how did you find that in the earlier years working in that space?
So there's a few things happened in between. A little bit later on, after we had moved together to England, Then my parents moved to the US, and I actually was living without my parents already at the age of 16. So I was living with a boyfriend at the time, with his mom, and they were supporting me. We were, you know, it was my new family in the UK. So, you know, I was growing up in this English environment. I was going there to a very good school, but you know, I had all my family far away. So my biological family was all far away. And what I sometimes wish is that there was a little bit more guidance for me in terms of, you know, making big life decisions and making those life choices, and who do I want to become and what do I want to do with myself. You know, because I was quite studious, I could learn, you know, how this Western Anglo-Saxon culture works. So I was able to get through it. I guess I more followed my intuition, actually. So even though I craved the guidance, but I did have my intuition because, for example, I made a choice to study mathematics and economics at university based on the teachers I had at school who were absolutely brilliant. There was also a bit of family conditioning still in me, even though I wasn't living with my mom at the time. There was some voice of hers in me, because I remember distinctly at some point her saying, "Oh yes, you're going to grow up to become a CFO." And so those kind of subtle things were probably also guiding me. And my mom was more influenced by this sort of growing up in the Soviet culture, this notion of kind of a status and achievement, and to feel safe, to kind of have this solid ground through work, through profession.
I so resonate with craving that guidance, but I think like even if my mom wanted to give me that guidance, her exposure to Korea wasn't, you know, like she's a financial advisor, but she didn't have that corporate like exposure or that wide exposure. So it was kind of like either you do what we do or you want a better life, and wanting a better life means you become a lawyer or you become a doctor. Like there was kind of like 3 or 4 things that was like within the awareness, you know, in that society. And I think like also being an overachiever and a hard worker and picking things up, then you kind of choose the logical path. And so yeah, just listening to you now, I was like, oh my god, I get it. Yeah. So then what did the first few years of your career look like? How did you experience it? So you had this like, okay, this seems like a good thing to do. It's a prestigious thing to do. How was that in real terms? How did you find it?
It was a definitely a prestigious, very good thing to do that I'm quite proud of, right? Because I was still feeling a bit like an outsider, you know, and a bit like an immigrant. You know, I did not have my social support, maybe that I was craving, and so I kind of felt like I had to go through it all alone. And so yes, it was giving me some level of satisfaction about myself, of course, and you know, my mom was happy as well. So the job was great in itself because I was working with big clients. So I was in the Big Four accounting firm. I got to learn a lot, and I got to, from quite early on, you know, to interact with high level executives, right, with CFOs. And so that kind of gives you confidence because, you know, here you are, this super young professional feeling really, really uncomfortable and like, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? But then you interact and it starts building up your confidence. So the next step was for me to move to Paris.
Maybe take us through how you actually landed up in Paris, you know, what you were doing there. What was the experience like working in Paris? I mean, everyone's now Emily in Paris obsessed. So like, what was your
Exactly.
experience? What was Katja in Paris like?
It's funny you say that because I was, you know, reflecting and thinking, oh yeah, it's kind of Emily in Paris style, but without all the drama.
Yeah.
So I just remember, you know, if we talk a bit about the glamour, you know, here I am, 25-year-old taking a Eurostar from London to Paris to come in for my interview sometime in December, and you arrive, you know, in Paris, the lights are all lit up, and you know the venue is between the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower. And so you're whisked into this kind of glamorous life, and I could not resist. I could not resist. So I said yes, and I wanted to join, the internal audit department with Capgemini, meaning that I was auditing only that one company. It was a wonderful experience. It was quite intense travel because as an auditor, you would go out maybe twice a month, once if it's long distance. So I was practically living out of a suitcase, which took a toll, right? It takes a toll. I could not really sleep on the planes, so it takes a toll on how you are, how you're feeling. But at the same time, as a young professional, you get to see the world. Again, you get to interact with different teams everywhere. And living in the center of Paris as well, it was a dream life.
It sounds like the dream. If you can do it, why not do it? I mean, that's just, I think, such a fabulous life experience to have.
Yeah, and professionally also, right? You get to work with executives quite high up in the hierarchy of the organization. So you feel that you have an impact because you can also then design the programs, you can contribute to the policy. So the impact is there. And so, I was also growing as a professional, which was fabulous for me.
What then prompted kind of that business school sustainability kind of segue?
But I was around 27 when the question pops up, but what do I really want? This is all fabulous and great, but at the time I was going through a bit of a depression, so it was due to kind of emotional burnout and kind of still feeling that something was, I was giving of myself, but it was not my thing fully, right? So something was amiss. And so the question popped up, well, what do I want for work? I would say it did not come about, just like that. I think there were multiple things and multiple on personal side as well. I was at the time working on my relationship with my mom, kind of difficult dynamics. We left when I moved away. I think there's a funny parallel I saw for myself quite recently that as I was working on a relationship with my mom, sort of trying to heal this mother wound in myself, but that was for me tied quite closely to who I am as a person and what I want to bring to the world. And so all these questions started coming up at that time. I went to work with a psychologist at the time, so she's the one who pointed actually me in the direction of, well, you're quite enmeshed with your mom. It's funny because I hadn't lived with my mom from the age of 16, but there was still kind of a strong enmeshment there. I was, in a way, very dependent on what she thought, how she was, and how she saw me. And so kind of that process of separating myself as a person had to happen.
That's such a powerful concept and insight. Was it that the enmeshment with your mom was also enmeshment with who she wanted you to be, and that didn't feel authentically right to you? What was the kind of the main insight for you?
Still a process indeed of kind of separating myself from those expectations of my family, of my mom, how she maybe saw me because I'm the only child. So maybe she wanted me to be, of course, like every parent wants their child to be happy, successful, healthy and all the things in the world. But that's their version of how we are and how we can be. That's not necessarily our. So I felt I was missing my version. Who am I really? Because all of that doesn't feel like me. So again, something was not right.
Was it then that you felt that going into like the more sustainability, the more purpose-driven was the feeling that that was going to close the hole somehow?
Yes, yes. So you could say, right, logically, that up until that point, I was living out my family cultural expectations, but it just did not feel right for me. I started searching within myself, and it's not, I don't think there was really a groundbreaking moment. You know, I've always been connected to the nature or anything like that, but it somehow came to me. So it's always very quiet, that intuition. I don't know if you can relate to it. That voice is just sort of there and it says, well, I'd be very curious to try and see, you know, what I can do for the planet. You know, I don't remember the exact thought process, but I think there was kind of just a calling. Like, I really want to save the world, basically. Yeah, and I wanted to do it from the business perspective. And so I applied for a master's at HEC Business School where we met. And the program was great for me to explore, you know, what is sustainability? What can we do?
You know, I think with the sustainability, it's interesting. We all went into it with, I think, a similar experience, you know, like that feeling drawn to it, making an impact, but with the question, what can that impact be? What did you then do after? Like, did you have any insights on that during the program, and what did you do? Yeah, following that.
So at HEC, we had professors, and I was particularly inspired by Olivier, who was the professor for sustainable procurement. I found the whole course really engaging and really powerful in terms of the impact. So there was still this kind of notion of, ooh, where can I have the most impact? And that's great. I now doubt that, you know, that's the only way we can be, you know, is to have the biggest impact. But okay, at the time, I realized that especially for companies with their international supply chains, the impact is massive. But it wasn't until a couple of years later that I would be able to really apply that through my next corporate job. Together with my partner, we decided we wanted to have it as a little adventure after the graduation, and we were actually thinking to go to Africa. Then what happened is that my partner got an offer to move to India. At first, my reaction was, I'm not sure, because I'd only been there once. That was during a rainy season in Mumbai. I was alone, and that was kind of a big culture shock for me. But then we sat down, we said, okay, let's give it a try. And so, was it 2014? We moved to Mumbai. I tried to apply for many different jobs or volunteering options. I didn't hear from many of them. You know, who's this person, you know, with a strange name coming here? We don't know you. But in the end, it was through another course mate of ours, Shweta, that I got in touch with Vivek at Sea Balance. So it's a very local Mumbai and Pune based social enterprise working on climate change solutions and bigger sustainability solutions in India. I became their team member, so very, very local, working with the team. And I was so happy. That was one of the happiest times of my life, I have to say. The adventure was amazing. Vivek himself was hugely inspiring for me in terms of really embodying more the ecological way of being, more connected, you know, and just inspiring in terms of his humbleness, in terms of his passion to make India a better place, a better country, but also very, very humble.
It sounds like a beautiful and an enriching, fulfilling experience. Was that when you went into kind of corporate sustainability? And, you know, what was that? Call it almost a shift, because, you know, I've also obviously worked in sustainability for 4 years, and some of it feels like, you know, it's real people that really care and that's really driven to make an impact. And just by who they are, they actually already make that impact. And, you know, you find some of those people in the corporate space, but often it's also quite different to we expected it would be or what we think we're signing up for. And so I'm really curious, transitioning then into a corporate space with this philosophy. Yeah, did that resonate?
It was kind of the moment, okay, now I'm back in Europe. Let's go for it. That supply chain impact. Let's do it. And yes, I took a position as a global sustainable procurement program manager in this multinational food and beverage company. It was unbelievably inspiring for me at the very beginning. I was in awe about, wow, look at the potential here, and look at all, indeed, as you said, all these people, the sustainability warriors, because the team was quite big. So you had people dedicated to climate solutions, you had people dedicated to specific product, plastic or packaging solutions. And then my focus was really on making the global supply chains free from forced labor, child labor, and also considering environmental impact. So a lot. And it was just me. Of course, you collaborate, right? So you don't work in isolation. And there were so many ideas. There were so many things that you wanted to change, that you could change. But it was a lot because you also were in demand maybe by a legal department. You were also being asked to fight fires when there was something happening at the supplier factory somewhere else. And I think I went in too much full force into it. Afterwards, things started to change because there were changes at the company level. The teams were trying to find their footing as well. And I was starting to feel more and more isolated in my position because I was based in Amsterdam. The team that I was directly part of was based in Paris. And there was just kind of a divide or a disconnect that I was increasingly starting to feel. Trying to give the best of yourself, but the task at hand is so huge. I had some of the things I had to resolve, right? I had to do away with my savior complex and try to carry it all on my shoulders and think that, everything was down to me. I think I could have collaborated better with the teams and to maybe not burn out. I don't know.
I hear that, striving to make the impact, seeing that, practically if we put all our resources and our minds on this, we can improve things. But I think what I'm also hearing is that you are an individual tasked with solving a systemic problem to an extent. I think so much of the challenges in supply chain, and it's not even in supply chain only, like I saw this in the sustainability work that I was doing as well, that actually the level of burnout is scary high because you have well-meaning people going in, seeing how things can be different, expected to change systemic problems,
Exactly.
and being pulled in all directions and not having the impact that you see could be had. And that's a really like a jarring and a confronting insight. And I think personally it's also, there's a lot of, well, for me and others, I've seen a lot of grief in that realization as well, that excuse my French, things are fucked. You see that it can be unfucked, but actually the world's unfair, and you just have to live with that realization and do something with it and go on.
Yeah. My goodness, you nailed it. And grief.
It's full on.
And grief at all levels. The grieving I personally had to do due to my own things I had experienced and never properly grieved. Maybe actually I was trying to create an impact as a result of trying to fix my own personal non-grievance or my own personal issues I've gone through. So I would say that for a lot of sustainability and giving and caring people, it is an ego thing. We want to give that which we have not been able to receive ourselves. And yes, it's so systemic, but actually we need to turn inwards and fill our own cup first, and then be able to give from that fulfilled place. There's almost like this needing to fix that, I feel. And then the burnout happens because we're not able to get that, right? Because you have to start here.
It's too big of a task, both societally but also personally. I want to segue a bit into your post-corporate career. If you can maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and kind of like what some of those pivotal moments was on the journey to where you are now.
I would call myself someone who is working towards and largely in service of health of the human systems. And so I know that sounds grandiose. I will explain. Due to my own personal journey and health breakdowns, I had a breast cancer diagnosis. I've already mentioned the burnouts and the health of the world, as well as the health of people that I see around me. This has kind of gradually become a bigger topic in my life. When I went to study sustainability and work on that, it was kind of treating the symptoms, but not really treating the root cause. And I always was asking myself, well, what is the root cause of all this? Why are we treating nature this way? Why are we treating other people this way? Why? At some point, it kind of clicked for me, well, it's something that's coming from human mind. So I want to understand the human mind. The need to understand myself and the need to understand the human mind and human psyche kind of coincided in me finally going to study a master's in psychology. I always wanted to work with people one-on-one. I was also inspired by my own executive coach. He kind of helped me to get me out of the tunnel vision I had, trying to survive and trying to get through the latter days of my corporate career, which were not easy, so many different dynamics there. Then I decided, okay, I really want to try myself as an executive coach because I see how powerful and how supportive that can be. I myself was supported. I want to be there for others. And so having done trainings, I connected with people in my network and launched then my career as an executive coach. Around about the same time that I was starting my study, so it was the same year, 2019, that I left the corporate and then I started my degree. I discovered Qigong, and I had done yoga for years and years before that. What it is, it's an ancient Chinese mind and body movement, and it connects the breath, it connects the whole body, the emotions, and through that you ultimately you can achieve really great health results. There's a lot of studies showing how powerful it can be. So I did my own master thesis on that, on how Qigong can support breast cancer recovery. And so I became very passionate about it. And then I found that there was a teacher course here in Ireland. So I subscribed to that. And yeah, I then began teaching that this year and hugely enjoying it. It's powerful to see the impact that has on people who come in. Maybe there's a bit of stress, and by the end of the class they're super relaxed and feeling great, and you hear that and you're like, yeah, this is powerful. So I think this is definitely something I want to dedicate my life to.
That's beautiful, Katja. And I love it's kind of like a full circle realization for all that, searching for, not only meaning throughout your career, but that personal fulfillment and, what you have to give to the world. And it's so beautiful to hear where you are now with the coaching, but also the really physical, which has been, of course, big for you, throughout your life, how the psychological, and your life experience then comes out physically. And yeah, so it's beautiful, the work that you're doing. Before we wrap up, I've got a few, kind of rapid fired questions we'll end up on from this conversation we've had. What has been some main insights you want the listeners to take away?
We're so much more resilient. I think probably one of the themes in my life has been the shattering of many different things, many illusions from the very beginning. And I would just like to say we are very resilient as human beings, even if we're facing major things. I also believe each one of us has a unique purpose to bring, or a value to bring to the world. If you feel called to go a bit deeper and to go a bit further into yourself, do that. It's not going to be easy, but with the right support, right? I mean, I could not have done any of that alone. Even though I did not have family, my direct family near me all the time, I would always have someone who would come in and provide guidance or a word or a book or whatever. So we're not alone. We might feel like that at times, but we're not.
Thank you for sharing your story so beautifully, so vulnerably, and so openly. So to end off, I'm just going to shoot a few rapid fire questions your way. You ready?
All right. I'm not sure, but okay.
Let's do it. So the first one is, if you didn't have to work, what would you be doing with your time?
Building schools. I think it's still my dream to do it in Africa.
Okay. Second question, if you had to choose one of your past jobs for the rest of your life, which one would you choose?
My job with the social business in India.
Third one, if you could get a do-over for one career decision, which one would it be?
Probably none. Probably it's meant to have happened how it happened. So
yeah, love that. Fourth one, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of career advice, what would it be?
I would say you're doing fucking amazing. You're super valuable. You're growing, right? So don't try to get here while you're still growing. Appreciate the path, and you're doing exactly right, exactly what you should be doing. You're doing amazing. I would have loved to hear that.
I would love to hear that now. That's great. Yeah, so we can be so ugly with ourselves. It's that's beautiful. And so finally, complete this sentence. When I grow up,
I am deeply accepting of who I am.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Katja, for your time. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thanks so much. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this, Nicolette.